Welcome, everyone, to the University Interdisciplinary Colloquium for the 18th of March, 2022. This is a colloquium that is hosted by Michigan State University, and we like to begin each colloquium with the Msu Land Acknowledgement. Michigan State University occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. In particular, the university resides on land ceded in the 1819 Treaty of Saginaw. We recognize Michigan's 12 federally recognized Native nations, historic Indigenous communities in Michigan, Indigenous individuals and communities who live here now, and those who were forcibly removed from their homelands. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous sovereignty, history, and experiences. For those who are interested in learning more about land acknowledgements in general, or the MSU Land Acknowledgement in particular, I am going to be putting a couple of links in the chat right now. For those of you who are new to the University Interdisciplinary Colloquium, it is a forum organized by the MSU Center for Interdisciplinarity and sponsored by the College of Arts and Letters that highlights the innovative and important interdisciplinary work involving the arts and humanities at Michigan State. Often interdisciplinarity as a term is used to, sort of as code for well-funded complex science. But in our view, some of the best and most influential interdisciplinary work reflects an appreciation for the aesthetic and humanistic dimensions of human experience broadly construed. The UIC, this series, is an attempt to acknowledge and amplify interdisciplinary contributions that feature aesthetic and humanistic elements. We meet every other week during the fall and spring semesters. And this year, all of the talks are on Zoom at the link that you followed to join us today. The next University Interdisciplinary Colloquium will be in 2 weeks on Friday, April 1st, from 12 to 1 on Zoom. Our speaker will be Abhishek Narula, who is Assistant Professor of Electronic Art and Intermedia in the Department of Art, Art History, and Design, who will give a talk entitled, "It's a Feature, Not a Bug, An Artistic Perspective on Failure." So that's in 2 weeks on the 1st of April. Before I introduce our speaker today, I want to talk just briefly about the question and answer plan. So Dr. Suleiman will give a presentation. While she's presenting, if you have a question or a comment that occurs to you, please deposit it in the chat or in the Q&A function. And when the time comes, after the presentation is concluded, I will read out the questions and comments in the order that they were posted to one of those, to either the chat or the Q&A. So please, don't hesitate to drop in questions or comments. You can drop them in as they occur to you. We are very pleased today to have with us Dr. Camelia Suleiman, who is an associate professor in the Department of Linguistics, Languages, and Cultures at Michigan State University. She earned her PhD in Sociolinguistics from Georgetown University. She has published 2 books, The Politics of Arabic in Israel, a Sociolinguistic Analysis, which was published in 2017 by the University of Edinburgh Press, and Language and Identity in the Israel-Palestine Conflict, The Politics of Self-Perception in the Middle East, which was published in 2011 by IB Tauris Press from London. Her numerous articles have appeared in a wide variety of journals. Just a subset of the journals in which her work has appeared include Pragmatics, Journal of Psycholinguistic Research, Middle East Critique, the Middle East Journal of Culture and Communication, Social Media and Society, and Journal of Social Distress and the Homeless. Her talk today is based on our 3rd book, Arabic Between State and Nation, Israel, the Levant, and Diaspora, forthcoming from Sussex Press, and to be distributed in the United States by the University of Chicago Press. Today, Dr. Suleiman is with us to deliver a presentation entitled The Limits of Sociolinguistics in Contemporary Jerusalem. Dr. Suleiman.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor O'Rourke, for this kind introduction. And I thank also the audience for making the time to come to my talk. When you introduced or opened with the land acknowledgement of MSU, that touches me in more than one way. First, the universalistic aspect of it, but second, as a Palestinian, and third, as a Palestinian presenting on Jerusalem, it has profound meanings to me, this simple introduction. I would like to start my talk. Jerusalem, what I'm actually trying to find is relationships between language, policy, politics, and identity in a city like Jerusalem, a very complex political situation. And the limits of sociolinguistics, I am not disavowing sociolinguistics when I say that, but I say that it may not give justice to the complexity of the situation of Jerusalem if we confine ourselves to one toolkit, one set of toolkits. So the question, what is going on here, right now, I don't think we would do Jerusalem a service if we confine ourselves, as I said, to the solely positivistic toolkit of sociolinguistics. That's my new book, and it's coming in in November, and these are my earlier books. Now, the outline of my talk is I will speak a little bit, about 5 to 7 minutes, about the key themes, which are the nationality law of Israel and background on Jerusalem. I want to make sure we have common grounds. And then I will discuss the approach, theory, method, and tools. That's another 10, 15 minutes. And then I'll give a few examples and then open it up for questions. So when I start giving examples, please stop me if you have questions, because I could go on and on with examples, but I would like to hear your input as well. The key themes are the top-down language policy, impact versus bottom-up resistance and accommodation. And mainly, so the argument is looking at the top-down government decisions and institutions that try to erase the Palestinian memory, so to speak, that's the strong argument. And then the resistance and negotiation for spaces for the Palestinian narrative and Palestinian memory and how this is happening. So that's in a nutshell what I'm doing. And when I say erasure, it's something that was, for example, Edward Said was obsessed with that. He called it oblivion. That was his worst fear, that the Palestinian situation will and memory will go into oblivion. So how to resist that also on a day-to-day, everyday understanding of the ordinary life of Jerusalem. Okay, so as I said, I want to start with the nationality law, because that's a pivotal moment in 2018. The Knesset passed a law. This is not just a law, it's a basic law. The Israel doesn't have a constitution, and therefore basic laws become the constitution, or in place of a constitution. There are 3 articles that are very relevant to the situation in Jerusalem. One is, and when I say basic law, it's hard to change it. It's not, any other law is easier to change. Article 1 specifies the basic principles of the law. Eretz Israel is the historic homeland of the Jewish people, in which the state of Israel was established, but again, without specifying the boundaries of it. B, the state of Israel is the state of the Jewish nation, in which it materializes its natural, cultural, religious, and historic rights for self-determination. There is no mention of self-determination for Palestinians. Article 3 stipulates that the whole United Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And Article 4 is about language. Hebrew is the language of the state. And that is a change from a law that Israel inherited from the British Mandate. Under British Mandate, which is between World War I to 1947, English, Arabic, and Hebrew, and in that order were the official languages of the state. Now, when Israel was established in 1948, they removed the English, but Hebrew and Arabic were the official languages. But it was an ordinary law. Now, in the basic law, Arabic is removed. So Hebrew is the language of the state, but Arabic has a special status, and that's very ambiguous as to what it means in the state. Organizing the use of Arabic in public institution is according to the law, and see the status of Arabic from before the start of this law will not be affected. So again, very ambiguous. Now, 20% of the country speaks Arabic natively, and these are the remainders of the Palestinians. In 1948, they remained. Some of them are internally dispossessed and displaced, but they were given Israeli citizenship, and their language, native language, is Arabic, but they're bilingual. They also know Hebrew. And that's not to mention the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and they don't have, some people are only refugees. They don't have any citizenship status. Now, I want to give you Jerusalem in a nutshell, about the way the municipality of Jerusalem defines it, and what is a neighborhood and what's not in Jerusalem. It has a little bit more than 300,000 East Jerusalem Arabs and about 500,000 Jews. Now, East Jerusalemites, many of them don't have any citizenship status whatsoever. They are residents of their own city, meaning they're allowed to vote in the municipal elections, but not in the Knesset. Some of them are Jordanian citizens de facto, because the West Bank used to be with Jordan and East Jerusalem from 1948 to 1967. And then in 1987, Jordan announced disengagement, meaning they're not asking for the return of East Jerusalem and the West Bank to Jordan in order to allow for Palestinian self-determination. So many people born, particularly after that time, they're not Jordanian citizens, and they're not Israelis, they're not citizens of any state, but they live in Jerusalem. Their ancestors have been there. Some can trace themselves a millennium. That's in a nutshell. So to show you a map, also this is an official map. The dark green is where many Jews live, and the light green is the east of the city. And here is the orange is the Arab neighborhood, East Jerusalem neighborhood, and the rest is Jewish. And here I want to show you how many students, how many children are in schools in Jerusalem. I don't want to show you the whole thing. I just want to show you this, the first to the right, the purple and green. The purple is Jews that are religious, non-religious. And here is religious Jews. So it's a religious city, really. And then more than 100,000 kids are Arab who go to Jerusalem schools. So that's what I wanted to show you. Here is the ages. The red is Jewish, the orange is Arab, and that means Jerusalem is a young city, and we have to think of its future regardless of who's Arab and who's Jewish. But from a humanistic point of view, as Michael said, interdisciplinarity means humanism, humanistic. And so it is a young city. It's a very ancient city, but the young population prevails. And here is the poverty. The orange is Arab and the red is Jewish. Here, the first right is children. The second is individuals, and here by families. And there are reasons why the East Jerusalem is so religious, so poor. And as I talk more about Jerusalem, it will become clearer to you as my audience. Now, when I say Arab schools, I could also spend the entire next hour just talking about schools, because schools are separated between west and east of Jerusalem. Arabs go to their own schools, Jews go to their own schools, but there's an Israeli curriculum, and very few Arab schools follow it. But there is the Palestinian curriculum that most Arab schools follow. The Palestinian curriculum was built in 2000, so around that time, after the Oslo Accords. They used to follow the Jordanian curriculum before that. Now, the municipality of Jerusalem in the past few years dedicated 90 million shekels. That's their 5-year plan for East Jerusalem to be spent on education, employment, and transportation. And we will see the difference this is making, in spite of this is a right-wing government and municipality that decided on this. Schools in Jerusalem, I just explained what it is, but here it's in numbers. If you want me to talk about that, give you more details, I could do that at the end. And so the number of children in schools. So this is Jerusalem in a nutshell. Of course, I'm not giving it any justice. My approach to a situation as complex as it is in Jerusalem is interdisciplinary. And to me, interdisciplinarity means I do not believe in disciplinary boundaries. So any method or any tool that I find from other fields that I think can answer some of the questions about Jerusalem and what's going on, the Erving Goffman eternal question, what is going on here, is only through interdisciplinarity. We need to cross these boundaries. We cannot confine ourselves to one toolkit, one way of thinking, one way of looking at the city and say that's that. Because at the core of it, I'm a linguist, and so form and meaning is the obsession of linguistics. What's this relationship? What is this interpretative relationship that is so opaque? How can we understand it a little bit? And I feel that seam line, a concept of a seam line, captures the interdeterminacy of meaning in a city like Jerusalem very well. And I will break that down, what I mean by seam line. Seam line is a real location in Jerusalem. It's the border between Jordan and Israel that cuts through the eastern part of the city. Today we see nothing of it because also the state of Israel is not is blurring the boundaries of east and west, but we could see traces of it, such as the museum of the seam line. So it is a physical location, but it is also a metaphor of the state of Israel and its relationship to the concept of nation and to citizenship. Seam line, and I adopt that from E.L. Gill, is the purification of the hybrid, which falls inside the contact line. So the seam line is inhabited. States don't like ambiguity. You're either here or there. There's a national boundary. You're either Jewish or you're Arab, for example, in the state of Israel. So what falls in between that gray area, the state is uncomfortable with it and ambivalent about it, because this transgresses the carefully outlined boundaries, and he's building on Latour. So I feel the Arabic term is more accurate. Arabic doesn't say seam line, Hebrew says seam line, and English. Arabic says contact line, because here is where contact happens between the two nations, in that gray area. Now, the state of Israel, according to E.L. Gill again, disliked 3 categories because they blurred these boundaries since its foundation. One is the Jewish Arab, or the Arab Jews, sorry. So these are the Jews, the Mizrahi Jews who came from Arab countries, and they may be the majority in the country. The state doesn't give statistics as who's Mizrahi and who's Ashkenazi anymore. Third generation, you don't have statistics, so we don't know, but it's assumed that they're the majority. So the state is ambivalent about them. The other category is the 20% that is Israeli Arab. That's what the state calls them, and or Palestinians who stayed and got citizenship by merely being Israeli but Arab. And you see that the new basic law is raising the boundary between what's Israeli and what's Jewish. So the question is, what are the implications? And the third category doesn't concern us here, but it concerned the Gil, and it's about the Arabists, the Jewish experts on Arab culture, who blurred the boundaries because the new Arabic language, the Arabic language and the Arab way of living, they understood that very well. So they were mistrusted by the state in general. Because they transgressed the boundaries. Now, in general, Jews do not learn Arabic. There's a language hierarchy, and it's used for, it's taught for the purpose of security and securitization, and not as a language that should be taught. Now, I want to move from the approach to the theory, and I embrace post-structuralism. It took me many years until I admitted it. I was in denialism because I was very positivistic, and my early articles were even statistical, etc. But I was drawn to this because I thought for a long time, maybe 15, 20 years, but now I am comfortable saying, yes, that's what I do. And to me, meaning is fluid and unstable, and identity is constructed. It's what we know. And I don't have to go into what post-structuralism is, but Foucault, Judith is important, the power knowledge. Judith Butler and her understanding of gender identity, but it applies to all types of identity. And the interpellation of Louis Althusser, I find them very powerful theoretical concepts that are needed. So I'm not going through to explain this. I want to move to the method. Method depends on what I'm looking at. I use methods accordingly. First, ethnography is very important to me. So I go and immerse myself. I spend months there, 3 months at a time, 4 months if I can. Thick description. My method is inductive. I don't come with question. Of course, I know, what's going on to some extent. I know, but I try to approach it inductively. Comparative, and that's comparative in a global sense when it comes to Palestinians. In that, I'm looking at how can I compare the situation to other situations. To me, the suffering is as important not to send it to oblivion as is the Armenian or the Jewish or any other, or the Black for that matter. It's something that has to be in our consciousness, and therefore comparative approach is important because it's a way of thinking. It becomes a way of seeing the world. And when I approached Arabic in particular, the comparison with the US and the Arabic in Dearborn became very important to me. The US and the securitization of Arabic was very similar to what was going on in Israel, even though there are differences. So I did a comparison like that. I interview people, but I also conduct a lot of conversations. Sometimes I record and transcribe. Sometimes I just rely on thick descriptions. I do site visits, and the decisions what sites to visit is I sort that out through conversations with people, what they deem as important in their town, in the social organization of their town, and whether it's NGOs or non-profit organizations that teach Arabic to Jews in Jerusalem or Hebrew to Arabs. I go and visit because people are talking about that. This is something important, etc. I follow the press closely. I look at archives, demographic data, maps. This is all part of the parcel. Libraries, bookstores, signage, etc. Tools. What's my toolkit? It looks traditional, but again, the encompassing theory around it, I try to be as inclusive and as relevant as I can to because I want to get to the understanding of how people in Jerusalem understand the city. I use conceptual tools like indexicality, code switching. I look at code switching, direct quotes, structure of narrative, repetitions. Code switching becomes important also, like when they were talking about schools and high school and where do students go after high school. It became very important whether I'm speaking in Hebrew or in Arabic to locals. They're using the Arabic and Hebrew terms, both, when they're talking about the school curricula. So they'll tell me, oh, the Tawjihi, which is Palestinian, or the Bagrut. So they're using these names, and that's significant to me, that they're not translating from one language to another. They're using the actual name, for example. And then six, I'm very Irving Goffmanian, like Irving Goffman in this, how the community organizes its experience, what and how they label experiences, what's important to label, what's not. And naming or the absence of a category is sometimes meaningful to me as well. And I will give some examples. So what's important to a community? I also look at the linguistic landscape. It's a very powerful visual image, chronotype and voice, that's Bakhtinian. Now, indexicality in a nutshell, I take that from Michael Silverstein. He's an anthropological linguist, and first and second order indexicality. Now, here it is in a nutshell, but again, I could come back to it. And I gave one example in this slideshow. So we're looking at beyond the pragmatics, what actually it means. So it goes back to the form and meaning and that opaque relationship. The chronotype, I take, and chronotype is a very important topic, concept I found, because people, the way they organize, their understanding what's going on in the city. 1948 is a chronotype. People refer to it always, and Palestinians will refer to it as Nakba, the catastrophe, they call it. But Jews will also refer to it as 1948. And 1967 is another important chronotype. So these are the everyday language of people, so to speak, in Jerusalem. Linguistic landscape and physical space is also social, cultural, political. So we look at how it's organized. And signage is not the entire signage, if we look at signage as part of the linguistic landscape, is very important to the linguistic landscape because it gives us so much. And voice, and voice is Bakhtinian again. Jan Blomart is the best the best sociolinguist who integrated it into work. So I'm citing him. But I like to cite also Mahmoud Darwish, the Palestinian poet, who says he who writes his own narrative inherits the land and owns the meaning completely. And we know Palestinians did not inherit the land. And that ties to going back to Edward Said on the burdens that befell the Palestinian discourse. Why is it so, and Palestinian voice, why is it so hard to speak up as Palestinians? Were they deprived of voice, basically? Okay, so I'm stopping here just to catch my breath and I want to give you some examples. I want to get into examples. Now, at the examples, you could stop me at any time because I am also aware of the time. We only have half an hour left. So I'm going to give examples of my approach and the tools, from interviews with people, from naming and street names, how much information they give us. And then specifically, we could look at the Hebrew University and then at schools, but I don't think we will have time, but I'll try. I met before I even started the research, because the nationality law really preoccupied my mind. So I met one of the major drafters of this law, Dr. Aviad Bakshi. He's a right-wing lawmaker, and he was responsible with a few others and his organization on drafting the different drafts of this bill before it became a law. And this is some of the stuff he told me, and it goes back to the seam line, how he wants the boundaries to be set. He doesn't want to allow this gray area, the contact zone between Arabs and Jews. He doesn't want it. He tells me the justification for this law, he says, the law will reduce the tension between Arabs and Jews in the state, as now both peoples know where the line exists between them. Before the law, the line was not clear, so he's talking about line. Arabs don't want to assimilate, and Jews don't want them to assimilate. So let's each stay where each is, basically. He regrets not knowing Arabic because it's good to know the language of the neighbor. That's his logic, not because his parents spoke Arabic. In his case, his mother was from Iraq, his father from Morocco. So Arabic was spoken at his home, but he wants it because of his Arab neighbors. He wants the line not to be blurred. Addressing me, and I am a Palestinian from Israel, which means my family remained and we were given Israeli citizenship. He says, no matter how far you go with your family history, my ancestors were here before yours, and he means 2,000 years ago. So to him, I also asked him, would you like to visit Baghdad, where your ancestors lived for, more than for 2 millennia? And they said, no, because it's a gula, it's exile. I have no need to see it. And my real home is here. And basically the implication that it's not my real home. So again, to go back to the seam line and setting the boundaries right. And that's a lawmaker saying that. But he says, where does he set the boundary legally? Individual and communal rights for Arabs are allowed, but not national rights and collective rights. So self-determination is a no, but yes, sure, if I steal from you, you could go to court and complain about me, etc. And here is where Arabic, I asked him, the law is ambiguous in regard to Arabic. What's this special status? And he said, well, because Arabs don't want to assimilate, but also because as a community, we're responsible for them, but not as a nation. In comparison, he brought the comparison of the Russians, who are, I think, more than 1 million Russians who still speak Russian in Israel, that they came after the Soviet Union fell. He said, no, we were pressured to make Russian also official. We don't want to do that because they need to learn Hebrew. They're Jews. But you don't have to, you could continue to speak your language, but no Hebrew. Okay, another example of what this toolkit can tell us about Jerusalem. I met the curator of Islam and Middle East collection at the National Library in Jerusalem, Raquel Yukilis. She's from New York originally, but she now lives in Jerusalem. And now the National Library is also a site of contention because Palestinian libraries from 1948, and there were many very valuable libraries, private, in Haifa, in Jaffa, in Jerusalem. Nobody knows where they went. Everyone thinks they're at the National Library. And, she told me there is some at the National Library, but most of the books and manuscripts, she tells me, have been actually lost forever. I could come back to that later. I even have figures and numbers of what she gave me. But I want to, this example, I want to bring to your attention because it involves language and the learning of Arabic and Hebrew now. She speaks Hebrew, but her native language is English, but she's fluent in Hebrew and she's somewhat fluent in Arabic. And here, this is how she describes her Arabic to me. Arabic is a mismatch of dialects, from Moroccan to Egyptian to Palestinian. Palestinians trust me and do not suspect me to be from the Israeli intelligence. After the first shock of hearing an Ashkenazi woman speaking in Arabic. So, as I said, Jews generally don't learn Arabic, but she did, so there's a shock. How is an Ashkenazi woman speaking Arabic? Oh, she must be from the security. But then no, when they hear that it's a mismatch of dialects, they say, oh, she didn't learn it from the security because the security will speak Palestinian Arabic. So if she spoke Palestinian Arabic, they would be suspicious of her. But her Arabic is not perfect. It's a mismatch of dialects. So she's good. That's what she says. Again, seam line, linguistic boundaries, etc. Near Hassoun and on the boundaries of the city and of Arabs being a minority, and the state uses the term minority, Arab minority. It tells me, but if someone draws a circle of 20 kilometers in diameter around Jerusalem, starting at the center of the old city, they will find that there are 760,000 Arabs compared to 6,000, 80,000 Jews. This is the capital of an Arab metropole as well as a Jewish city. Nir Hassoun, I should introduce you to him. He's a journalist at the Israeli leftist newspaper, a well-respected newspaper, Haaretz, and he chronicles the life of Jerusalem. He's from Jerusalem, to the Jewish population. So he has a column talking about the city, and he's learning Arabic, and he's doing a doctorate at the Hebrew University in Middle Eastern Studies. That's the separation wall again, no contact. I want to just cite him one more time and then stop to see if you have questions. He tells me, let's start, I was, talking about naming. Let's start with the name of the city. It is a city that its Arab residents refuse to call it by its Israeli official name, Yerushalayim, or its Arabic translation of Yerushalayim, or Shalim, which is, by the way, in the Bible, okay? Jerusalem in the Arabic Bible is Urshalim. So this is a word Christian Arabs know. But rather to them, it is Al-Quds. This is a ridiculous situation. Okay, I'm stopping here to see if there are questions, and or I could go on with examples.
Camelia, there's a
Yes.
there is a question in the Q&A from Deborah. Did you say that Nir Hassan is only learning Arabic now?
Yes. Why? Why, Deborah, are you asking this question? Do you know him?
I mean, Deborah, you're welcome to
talk. Yeah.
Respond in the. I can also make it possible for you to talk if you'd like to. Let me see. You're welcome to talk now if you want. Oh, she deposited another comment in the Q&A because he writes very sympathetically about Jerusalem Arabs, and and she figured that he knew their language.
No, he doesn't. He's learning it now, but I suspect from his name that he's of Arab descent. But again, the state in the 1950s, when most of the Jews from Arab countries came to the country in the 1950s, there was a process of de-Arabization, of let's forget your Arabic, let's teach your children only Hebrew. That's why he would be learning it now. I suspect his parents know it. I mean, just from his name, I would make these assumptions. I actually never asked him. But yes, he's very sympathetic.
She writes, she thanks you and then says also what was he saying by ridiculous situation? What was the meaning of ridiculous situation?
Yeah, but, you know that for almost half the population of Jerusalem refuses to name it by its official name. They reject the name. So let's start with the first things, the name. Nobody's agreeing on the name. That's what's ridiculous. And I could bring you more examples about disagreement of names. Here is, and I'm sure Deborah can read it in the 3 languages. This is a main gate in Jerusalem, in the old city. And again, the law in Israel is first the Hebrew, then the Arabic, then the English, in this order. So the Hebrew says Shechem gate, it's the gate to Nablus in the West Bank. The Hebrew name for Nablus is Shechem. The Arabic says it's the column name, because there was a Roman column when they built the wall during Islamic time. So it's the column gate. And the British chronotype calls it Damascus gate. And we find many places in the old city where the names are not in agreement, so they'll just keep the names as they are. I want to talk a little bit about also naming in West Jerusalem, for example. So again, in mixed cities in Israel, this is a Supreme Court ruling that, and major highways, you have to have 3 languages. But in that order, first Hebrew, then Arabic, then English. So when we talk about oblivion and erasure, you see under the Hebrew, first of all, Yafo in Hebrew, Yafa in Arabic, Jaffa in English. But under the Hebrew, you see that it says it's a port city of Jerusalem, you know, because during the British, Jerusalem and Yafa were in one province, and Yafa was the port of Jerusalem in early times. That's what they say. A port of Jerusalem in early times. What's early times? 1948, and what happened in 1948, and where the people, the Arab people of Yafa, where they ended in basically refugees in Gaza and in Beirut. I want to give another examples. One example about street names, and there was a committee that the municipality appointed, and they brought a Middle Eastern expert Jewish to help decide on the names. So this committee went to Arab community leaders and asked them, what would you like to name your streets? So they rejected names that have to do with nationalism, rejecting them completely. So Yitzhak Reiter is the guy, he tells me Mahmoud Darwish was not allowed. Mahmoud Darwish, every Palestinian loves Mahmoud Darwish. So no, we didn't allow them a street name with Mahmoud Darwish, no. And then he says, I blocked the name of Naji Al-Ali, I. So he has the power, the state gives him the power to block a name that the community wants to name in the neighborhood. So talking about naming and yes. So the language choice is also, you know, I look at it as I blocked the name of Naji Al-Ali single-handedly against the wish of maybe 300,000 people who wanted to see the name in their neighborhoods. We have a question. Another question.
There are a couple of questions that are outstanding, and I'm not sure how you want to go. We have about 13 minutes left, so I don't know if you have more that you would like to say, Camelia, or and then take questions, or do you want to take the questions now and then how would you like to proceed?
Let's look at the question and see if I could incorporate them in wrapping up this talk.
Okay, so from Salah, we have the following.
Yeah.
Are you also studying the multiple languages in Jerusalem Jews and the status of Hebrew among non-native speakers of Hebrew? For example, many Russian Jews do not necessarily speak Hebrew.
Yes. No, I'm not looking into that because Jerusalem in particular, it has second and third generation Jews, so it is native to many Jews. And in fact, Israel as a country, 75% of the Jews in Israel are born in Israel in today's statistics. So no, I'm not looking at other languages, but I should maybe. And this is an excellent question, Salah, because I really enjoy riding the bus there because I get to hear all the languages. Yiddish is spoken, Ladino is spoken, but older people, younger generations speak just Hebrew. And I hear Arabic that is with the Hebrew idioms from older Jewish people. And Mark, yes, the hubris of writer, yes, that's from Mark Bernstein.
Yeah, and so Mark
Yeah.
has a few things in the chat, and so I'll read.
Yes.
You might read the second one because it includes
Yes.
Hebrew in it, and I'm not. That's not a language I'm proficient in. Fascinating talk. Is it relevant to point out that Jerusalemite Arabs were or are offered Israeli nationality? And then there's a second one that involves a translation or of Al-Quds. So in Mark asks, so why does Hassan, a leftist, and Israeli Jews, a leftist in quotes, and Israeli Jews have a problem with it?
Yeah, because
the first pair of comments, and then the last pair are, the hubris of writer is shocking. Please make sure to leave time to address resistance. And I enjoy riding the Arab buses in Jerusalem.
Oh, so maybe we do that together next time. But well, here HaKodesh gives it a Jewish chronotype. Al-Quds, while its literal translation, when you say Al-Quds, it's understood as the Islamic Arab chronotype. So that's where the problem is, I think. And the nationality, yes, the citizenship, Israel is offering identity cards so they can become citizens. But I heard that there are many obstacles, like, you know, even if they cross that psychological barrier, people, Arab people in Jerusalem, to go to the Ministry of Interior to get an ID, there are still many barriers. It's very slow and they need to do a lot of bureaucracy in order to get it. It's not very straightforward. And okay, and then Shaw is saying, say more about chronotype.
Yes, yeah, please say more about chronotype.
I
second that, by the way. I mean, it'd be nice to hear a little bit more about it and how it's kind of reflected in some of the examples that you've discussed.
Yes, in general and in particular, when people are narrating, they're always mentioning the 48 and 67. It's like, you know, an era ended and an era started. They're not telling me 1917, the Balfour Declaration. They're not telling me these dates. It's the 48. That's what people really talk about. It's still very alive, and the 67. Now, where do we see the chronotype other than in narratives and in how people organize the experience in the city, also on street names? And there is the erasure, like when I put the, well, here, 3 chronotypes at once. The Ottoman, that's the Arab, so the Islamic up until the Ottomans, and then the Mandate, the British, and the Jewish, or the Israeli, the 7 on, Sha'ar Shkhem. So at a very visual surface level, we could see the 3 chronotopes even in this examples.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I want to say here is that example shows the chronotope, the oblivion to earlier chronotope, what happened in 48 before. It's in earlier times, that's all what it says. And it's written in Hebrew, so only Hebrew speakers are reading this, and they may not know what happened. I want to give another example also from street signs on chronotopes. And as you see, 3 names, first Hebrew, then Arabic, then English. And in the 3, they put the Arabic name of the neighborhood. That's West Jerusalem. And this is the neighborhood Talbiya where Edward Said was born, okay? West Jerusalem was also inhabited by Arabs. So they still use the name, the Arabic name in parentheses. Why? Because even the Jews use the Arabic name. They will never use the Hebrew name, even Jews. Now, according to Nir Hassoun, I asked him, why do you think this is the case? And he said, if a neighborhood was inhabited before 48, the Jews, some of them still remember it, still in their lifetime. So they continue to use the name. But if it wasn't inhabited, then you will see only the Hebrew name.
Thank you, Camelia. Mark offers a suggestion, and then there's a question from Deborah. Mark says, perhaps it would help others to understand chronotope by pointing out that it seems to align the dichotomy between space and time.
Yes, of course, it condenses both, and I went over its definition, the definition I take very quickly, but I could go back to it.
Seeks to align the dichotomy between space and time.
Yes, yeah, defines it. So I follow Blomart he defines it as the chunks of history that can be invoked in the organization of the indexical orders of discourse, such as chronotope of colonialism, independence, etc. Right. Now, I'm not getting here more sophisticated, but some linguists add another term, scale, in order to operationalize chronotope. They'll say chronotope is still at a theoretical level. In order to operationalize it, let's use the term scale as an operational term. And indexicality, again, the first order pragmatic, second order is the meta-pragmatic. What is the real meaning? So,
and Deborah asks, would you say the different names for this city are also chronotopes, referring to the Jewish and Islamic holy events and times?
Yes, yeah, I would say that definitely, yes.
And Sean wants to know a little bit more about the theoretical provenance of chronotopes. You mentioned that Blomart, right? Got it from Bakhtin.
Yes.
And so Sean asks, how does it come from Bakhtin into sociolinguistics?
Yes, it has come into sociolinguistics for a long time. From Bakhtin. And when I went to Georgetown in the early 1990s, we had an entire course, and I was in the specialization of sociolinguistics. We had an entire course just reading Bakhtin and trying to find out how we can apply his concepts of language into discourse analysis, basically. So it's a path that has been well trodden, and Georgetown was, I think, a pioneer in that in the US, with Deborah Tannen and Deborah Schifrin making these connections. But also Blomart, it's profound what he did with Bakhtinian concepts. And I could send Sean references. Does that answer the question, at least partially, to Sean? I could send you some references.
We have about 4 minutes left. Camelia, did you have a wrap up that you'd like to do, or would you or we can continue to take questions? It's entirely up to you.
I just want to say this is what I did to go back to what I
Okay.
did. Just to
And
remind
so
you.
while you're finding that, Salah points
Yes.
out,
Yeah.
mentions Russian formalism in connection with
Yes.
Bakhtin.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Mark brings up the notion of resistance again, which is
Yes. Again, and that's why he sits very nicely with Judith Butler, so to speak, the notion of resistance in post-structuralism. So, you know, the notions of heteroglossia, dialogism, multivocality, voice, all of these notions and chronotope are very important to linguistic analysis in Georgetown tradition and in other traditions in Europe, such as with Jan Blomert. And I think they wanted to see the resistance, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here, I'll give a very quick example. I know it's out of context, but I'll try. Okay. I want to give it just an excerpt from a narrative of one of the of students from East Jerusalem at the Hebrew University. So they tell me we don't call ourselves Palestinian. We call ourselves Maqdisi. Maqdisi from Quds, literally Beit al-Maqdis, one of the names of Jerusalem Islamically from through the Islamic chronotype, Arab Islamic. So why Maqdisi? They tell me it gives weight to Jerusalem, Al-Quds. If I say Al-Qudsi, no, there is no historic weight. But Maqdisi, I am Maqdisi. That's how I want to define myself. And I say, so that's what they want to do, and not Palestinian. And I said, why not Palestinian also? Well, those people from the north took the term, let them have it. We want to call ourselves Maqdisi. Who are those people from the north? People like me. Anything north of Jerusalem that is Palestinian is north. And here is what one student tells me, also from East Jerusalem. I said, what is north? Because they tell me, oh, people in the north. North of Jerusalem is the triangle area that's around Tel Aviv. There are some Arab towns and villages, which is far. The Galilee, which is the north, and then the Golan Heights. So there is a perceptual map of what Israel claims to be Israel, given back to Israel by an Arab Palestinian student from East Jerusalem, but with challenging the meaning, with a challenge to the meaning. I don't know if I'm giving it any justice in half a minute, but I find this example amazing, that there's a perceptual map of what is north of Jerusalem, who constitutes north of Jerusalem. And of course, it's only thinking of Palestinians.
Mark asks, right, is the temple at its core a Jewish chronotope?
It's Beit al-Maqdis. Beit al-Maqdis is an Islamic term, because this is how Muslim historians refer to it, Beit al-Maqdis. When we look at travelers from the Middle Ages writing about Jerusalem, they refer to it as Beit al-Maqdis. Now, they never, they never denied that the temple was there. So perhaps implicitly in their text, there is a recognition in the Middle Ages, in the writing of geographers, of this is the site of the temple, but it wasn't contested as it is now. Now the politics is different. So yes, there is an embedded Jewish meaning, but within an Islamic chronotope, and that's what I think they're focused on in today's Jerusalem. Is that a good answer, Mark?
Camelia, I think we have reached the end of our time. And I think, let me see. Deborah has a comment in the chat. Maqdisi shows that complexity within Palestinian communities. We often hear about different segments of Jewish Israeli society, but Palestinian differences are not recognized. And so as a a comment, I think, on in kind of unpacking what was part of what was fascinating about your talk. Thank you so much, Camelia, for your insights and for your talk. It's a wonderful addition to the University Interdisciplinary Colloquium. And thanks everyone for taking time today to join us for the colloquium. We really appreciate your participation. Dr. Suleiman, thank you so much. And
I want to thank everyone, and thank you, Michael, in particular. And I want to apologize because I was very hurried in the end, and you cannot make shortcuts sometimes when in a thinking analytical process. You cannot make a shortcut, so I apologize.
There's no apology necessary. This is really interesting talk, and I think the examples in particular are quite remarkable. And so please, no apology necessary. And thank you so much. And we hope to see you in a couple of weeks at the next University Interdisciplinary Colloquium. And once again, thank you, Dr. Suleiman.